Man, my copywriter's on a battle metaphor kick. Maybe we could shift gears just a little? Is that okay with you, Mr. Copywriter Dude? On the next clip, we go to the Personal Edge Call. This training call, whereon Rich pauses from his marketing advice to ruminate on matters more personal, is fast becoming the most popular call. Let's listen in as Rich shares with us that doing the right thing is the right thing to do. Period. Mr. Big Booming Voice.
Number 5.
Doing the right thing is the right thing. Now, through all this, I was able to accumulate a nice little sum of debt, probably in excess of $2 million, which is an interesting phenomenon when you go from being a millionaire to being in debt over $2 million. That's always fun. I'd encourage that to anybody. Put that in your goals for the next 10 years. Earn $1 million and then go into debt too. But there's an interesting story that I heard right when this was all going down, and it really buoyed me up. And I want to read you this story. It's very short. Here it is. It says, in the 1930s, Fred Snowberger opened the doors of a new pharmacy in northeastern Oregon. It had been his dream to own his own business, but the economic turnaround he had hoped for never materialized. 8 months later, Fred closed the doors of his pharmacy for the last time. Even though his business had failed, Fred was determined to repay the loan he had secured. Some wondered why he insisted on repaying the debt. Why didn't he simply declare bankruptcy and have the debt legally forgiven? But Fred did not listen. He had said he would repay the loan, and he was determined to honor his word. His family made many of their own clothes, grew much of their own food in their garden, and used everything they had until it was thoroughly worn out or used up. Rain or shine, Fred walked to and from his work each day, and every month Fred paid what he could on the loan. Years passed, and finally the wonderful day arrived when Fred made the last payment. He delivered it in person. The man who had loaned him the money wept, and with tears streaming down his face, said, "You not only paid back every penny, but you also taught me what a man of character and honesty is." To this day, nearly 70 years after Fred signed his name to that note, descendants of Fred and Irma Snowberger still tell this story with pride. This act of honor and nobility has lived through the decades as a cherished example of family integrity. Well, that was an interesting thing for me to hear, because at that time, when I looked up in August of 2004 and realized, hey, I've taken all the $1 million in cash that I possess, and I've put it literally all back into my business, and now there's still $2 million more that we owe. My partner had left, chose not to participate in any of the digging out, was pretty good at helping make the mess, but when it came to digging out, he was gone. And I remember my COO was still with me for a short period of time before I had to let him go, and he looked at me and he said, "Look, as your advisor and as your friend, I'm telling you, I would not put another dime into this business. You need to write the letter, you need to sign the bankruptcy note, and you need to move on. It's the best thing." And I thought about this story about Fred Snowberger, who I'd never heard of before outside of this little story, and this little act of paying that last debt. And I thought, you know what? The right thing to do is the right thing to do, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I feel is probably the right thing, and I'm going to stick it out and make those payments. Now, here's what happens when you owe somebody or a collection of somebody's $2 million and your business is not generating cash flow sufficient to cover the debt, you end up, well, let me read to you from my journal what happened. This is the Monday after my business collapsed. That next Monday, I went to Idaho Falls to meet with a client. This was all swirling in the background. I came to find out my former partner had lured 2 former employees to work with him, and they were contacting all of our prospective customers that we had in our system, offering to give them a $4,000 credit, which was the amount they had deposited with us, since they, quote-unquote, would never get it back, and then only charge them additional $6,000 for training. Essentially, all of our prospects had been stolen. The next Thursday, I held another training program. It was the only way that we were making any money to pay the bills. That Thursday was literally the lowest day of my life. Monies from agents consulting, and we used to have dollars coming in from our agents, which we then owed them 90% of it back. We took a 10% cut. So their money would come in, we would send it back. Money from agents consulting had evaporated overnight, and by Thursday we had only received $2,000 worth of agent checks. A normal week prior to then, we would have brought in a bare minimum of $100,000, more like $200,000 on average. So we dropped our income by 100 times. I was sure that we were sunk. We had over $260,000 in agent checks that we had cut and released, but now we had no money coming in to cover them. We were going to bounce all of the checks with no hope of recovery. I called Glenn and Sam, who were two employees who had agreed to come back and work for me, and told them to start looking for other jobs. We were done. Meanwhile, I was trying to teach a group of 15 or 20 people about marketing, to say the least. I was extremely distracted, but managed to get through and do an okay job. That night I had a hard time sleeping. What were we going to do? I finally got to sleep. At 3:30, I sat straight up in bed and thought, wait a second, there is a way out of this. The next morning, here's editorial to this, with great humility, I called my dad at 8 in the morning and told him I needed to discuss the situation. He came over Saturday morning, agreed to loan me some money, and I would put in approximately $80,000, basically all the money I had left. It was very close to everything that I had. Then he agreed to help me get through a situation that was difficult. There was a delay in getting the wire transfers into my bank account because of a computer problem at the bank, and I couldn't get a bunch of my money from American Funds because of an address change that caused a delay. Long story short, the money was supposed to be in the bank account by Tuesday, but it didn't get there till Wednesday, and checks started bouncing. I just told our agents that I would not leave them hanging, and now their checks were bouncing. But good communication allowed them to know that we would cover them, which we did. Over the next several weeks, I worked closely with my dad to manage cash flow and pay down the debt to the MCAs. Then we decided to tackle the debt. We owed 200 creditors over $2 million. Good luck with that. We also had 5 lawsuits. So, anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you all that.
I know why you're telling us all that, Rich. Sharing personal struggles and personal growth is the right thing to do. Oprah tells me that Maya Angelou says that when we know better, we do better. If that's the case, we should all be helping each other know better. Thanks, Rich.